Hey everyone, this is Nitro. So I haven't done a how to build video on heroes for a while, so I thought I would do one on one of the more useful SR characters, which is Imelda. And Imelda, her primary role is in preparation for Summit Arena. Once Summit Arena approaches, her primary role here is for her fixed damage prevention via her exclusive helmet, Gorgeous Red. However, despite this being her primary role, Imelda herself is actually very multi-purpose due to her wide variety of skills. So, let's begin at the very first thing, talking about the required characters to unlock her bonds. Alright, and in terms of unlocking bonds, Imelda, let me just find my Imelda first. Aha. So, for her fourth bond, the hit points, defense, and magic defense increasing bond, you require Vargas, which is fairly easy to get. The fifth bond requires Bernhardt. So, given that intelligence is her primary stat, you absolutely need Bernhardt to use Imelda. So, with her bonds covered, let's now talk about her talent. Now, Imelda really needs to be at 5 stars and ideally at 6 stars to truly use her. 5 stars is acceptable, 6 stars is when she truly shines. Okay? Below that, she's kind of mediocre. So, let's talk about her talent now. Queen's Gauntlet. Unit damage increases by a certain percentage. Okay? After taking action, casts his Iron Hand on a certain number of allies within 2 blocks, not including this unit. And the effect is that hero's damage increases by a certain percentage, but lose 10% hit points after battle. Now, this hit point loss is considered fixed damage, which means once she has her Gorgeous Red helmet, exclusive helmet, it will prevent her allies from losing hit points. So basically, until she gets access to Gorgeous Red, which appears with the Estelle and Joshua banner, she's not exactly a great hero. Once her exclusive helmet is available, which is once again from the Estelle Joshua banner from the collaboration, that's when Imelda truly starts to shine. So, with that said, let's talk about the percentage increases, shall we? So, for the unit damage increase, it's 10% at 2 stars, 12% at 3 stars, 14% at 4 stars, 17% at 5 stars, and then 20% at 6 stars. So, in addition to that, with Iron Hand the Iron Hand casting, the number of allies depends on her star level, once again. At 2 stars, it's just 1 ally. At 3 and 4 stars, it becomes 2 allies. At 5 stars, which is what I currently have, it's 3 allies. And then at 4 stars, it becomes 4 allies. So that's another reason why it's so important to have Imelda at 5 or 6 stars. At 5 stars, you're affecting 3 other allies. And then at 6 stars, you're affecting 4 other allies, which would be your whole team for PvP. So, really, at 5 stars is when she starts being usable, due to it affecting 3 allies. You'll miss one of your allies, but still that's acceptable. And then at 6 stars is when she truly shines because all your other allies within 2 blocks of her are guaranteed to get the Iron Hand effect. So, the final part, which changes, is the hero's damage increase. At 2 stars and 3 stars, it's only a 10% increase. At 4 stars and 5 stars, it becomes a 15%. And then at 6 stars, it becomes a 20% damage increase. So once again, it just shows why Imelda truly only starts to shine at 6 stars, right? The damage increase buff is dramatically increased, right? The number of friendly units that gets buffed is increased, and her own unit damage is increased. But 5 stars is perfectly usable, despite that. But if you're talking about a 4 star or 3 star, I would say absolutely no way. Don't use her at that time. Alright, so with that said, let's talk about Imelda's best class. And she really has two final classes, Oracle and Queen. Oracle is a holy class, while Queen is the mage class. Because mage classes always have higher intelligence than holy classes, Queen should be her final class. Oracle, however, is usable temporarily. So let's talk about the way to build her up initially. If you don't have any runestones to put into Imelda, the best path is Mage to Bishop to Oracle, because that unlocks the critical skills for Imelda as a healer, which is Regrowth, Regenerate, and the Dispel skill, right? She'll also have the option of using Mass Attack from her Mage class, and she will always start with Freeze Strike. So with only a single class mastery, it would be Mage, Bishop, Oracle for sure, because that gives you her ideal healing skills that makes her a great secondary healer. And she has the Freezing Strike to kill off enemy Lancers, and Mass Attack to buff up your allies. Unlocking the Archmage and Queen class, the advantage of that is primarily for additional stats via the class mastery, right? Because Archmage gives 12 intelligence increase, and Queen gives another 25. So that you're looking at a 37 additional intelligence, as well as 138 more hit points. So that's the primary reason to get the double class mastery, that intelligence increase. Remember, this intelligence increase is a base intelligence increase. So all the percentages that you get from the equipment enchants and from the bonds will increase that even further. So that do not look down on this 37 intelligence increase at all. So generally speaking, Mage, Bishop, Oracle, then get access to Archmage and Queen afterwards. If you went from Mage to Archmage to Queen, she is usable. In fact, I used her like that for the longest time, where she brought Mass Heal for one skill, and she would bring Freeze Strike for a second skill, and then the third skill would be a choice between Blizzard and occasionally Mass Attack. And she was quite usable in this state as a secondary healer with just Mass Heal, and mainly for damage dealing. But it is kind of awkward, I have to admit, because she is missing the regrowth heal as well. But nonetheless, rather usable in that state. So, with that said, let's talk about her skill combos. Now, if you've just gone from Mage, Bishop, and Oracle, the skill limitations means that you really just have Regrowth and Mass Attack and Dispel as your 3 2-point skills. And in terms of 1-point skills, you'll have Regenerate and Freeze Strike. So depending on the situation, you'll probably swap around with these skills. I can't give you a for sure skill combo simply because all of these skills are useful, right? Dispel really helps to counter things like, let's say, Bozel's debuffs or Listell, right? Regenerate helps keep your tank healthy, but if you have another healer like Tiaris or something, you probably won't need Regenerate, and instead, you'll probably choose to bring Freeze Strike for 1.5 times damage with additional damage to Lancers. Mass Attack is great for the immunity to silence effect, as well as a 20% int increase, right? So in terms of best skills, it is hard to say. You'll mix and match, right? If you have her with double class mastery, then it gets even more complex, right? Blizzard, right, with the -1 mobility can help quite a bit in disabling enemy guard skills if used at the right time, and the enemy does not have Sage's Hat on them. Thunderstorm decreases enemy defense by 20%, making it easier for your other characters to one-shot the enemy. So having her bring AoE attack skills is rather viable. In that case, she would be 2 AoE attack skills, and you'll probably give up on the regrowth, and you might bring Freeze Strike. So this would be like another version, an offensive Mage Imelda, right? Do note though, both of her AoE skills only have a 3 span. They are not, it is not comparable to, let's say, Bozo's Earthquake, which has a 4 span. So that's an important thing to note. So it's because of the limitation on her lack of movement and the fact that her AoE skills only have 3 span that Imelda is generally considered more of a support healer than an AoE attacker. But depending on the heroes you end up with, you may end up bringing some AoE attack skills on her instead of the Dispel, Mass Heal, and so on, Regrowth kind of combo. Alright, so, but at the end of the day, the interesting thing about Imelda is all of her skills, every single one here, actually has a use for PvP. So I truly cannot give you a best skill combination, you know. If you watch some of the battles where I'll be using Imelda, maybe that can give you some reference on the skills to bring for her. Alright, so I've talked about her skills, and now let's move on to talk about Imelda's soldiers. First though, I'm going to just equip my most common setup for Imelda, which is probably Dispel, Regrowth, and Freeze Strike. So, soldiers. From the training ground, Imelda actually only gets 2 soldiers. The first one is the Holy Knight, right? Cavalry units. And the second one she gets is the Firebrand Snipers, which is an archer unit. I don't like either soldier for her, personally speaking. I don't like the Holy Knights because they're cavalry. In forest terrain, the fact that she would have cavalry soldiers would reduce her movement down from 3 to 2. So that's why I'm not a fan of the Holy Knights on Imelda. As for the Firebrand Snipers, well, I generally don't like mixing and matching where the soldiers are doing physical damage and your healer is doing intelligence-based damage. It's just a bit awkward to me. So the soldier I prefer for Imelda is wizards, because wizards do magic damage, right? And when attacking, increases their attack and magic defense values by a certain percentage. So this just means that when Imelda is attacking, the wizards hit very, very hard, right? And they have much higher stats when you compare these mages to, let's say, the bishops, right? So definitely, in my opinion, wizards are her best soldier, right? Firebrand Snipers, like I said, I don't like mixing physical attack with intelligence attack, and Dark Elf Snipers are pretty much the exact same thing. So, with her best soldier covered, let's move on to talk about equipment. And before I talk about the equipment, let's first talk about the enchants. Okay. Imelda is rather flexible in terms of the enchants. Okay? You can choose almost any of the red enchants, meaning she's quite happy with Full Moon, with the plus 10% to all offensive and defense stats. She is quite happy with Magic, right? Which increases skill damage by 10% and AoE damage by an extra 5%. My personal preference for her, especially if you plan to build her for PvP, is Breeze. Because Breeze gives the 10% damage increase, and most importantly, after taking action, you get a 30% chance to increase mobility by 2. Imelda is one of those characters who severely lack mobility. She has 3 base mobility, and that's it. There's no way for her to really increase mobility. Thus, Breeze helps a lot, especially if you plan to use her for potentially doing AoE attacks, right? Thunderstorm and Blizzard. That plus 2 mobility, bringing her up to 5, will be very useful. So that's why I personally prefer the Breeze enchant. Early on though, I should mention, it's perfectly viable to use the Crystal enchant on her, because Crystal enchant increases healing by 20%. And if you have an Imelda that is in the Bishop and Oracle line, she'll probably have the regrowth skill, meaning it'll increase the amount of healing that this provides. I personally just don't like it because you're wasting crystal scrolls, and you know that sooner or later you're going to replace that enchant. So generally speaking, I would say the best enchant for her is probably Breeze, followed by Full Moon, followed by Magic. Right? Alright, so in terms of enchant values, Imelda just wants the standard mage enchant values, which means you want ideally 15% intelligence increase on the weapon, preferably with another plus int increase. On the accessory, you definitely want plus 10% int, right? Preferably with, let's say, plus hit points again. From the armor and helmet, you generally just want, ideally, plus 15% hit points, ideally with some plus int percentage. For the armor and helmet, it caps out at only 5% int, so if you can get some plus int, it would be nice, but primarily you would want plus 15% hit points to increase Imelda's survivability in PvP on both of these. So with these two both giving hit point increase, that would be plus 30% increase in hit points, which really, really helps. Int would be the great secondary stat to get, and then if you were looking for a third stat, well, you know, it could be plus hit point value, plus int value, or plus magic defense percentage. And those would be pretty much the ideal enchants. So clearly my Imelda's current set of gear needs some work. There's not enough hit point increase from any of these, and in fact her meditation ring doesn't even have 10% int increase. So with that all said, let's talk about her gear at this point. And Imelda more or less runs the standard mage gear. For the weapon, you want a blue moon or a red moon. For the armor, the best armor for all mages is really Tenyos Robe, because Tenyos Robe gives plus 10% hit points. If you don't have a Tenyos Robe, well, Baldur's White Robe is a very acceptable secondary armor for mages. Not as good as Tenyos, but very acceptable. For her helmet, definitely Gorgeous Red, as you see here, because that's her exclusive item, right? It's the item that gives 4 allies within 2 blocks of her immunity to fixed damage, which is the main reason to bring Imelda after all, as a hard counter to Listell and other characters who do fixed damage. And for her final item, the accessory, there's really just 3 choices. Okay, for Imelda, you want her to get either immunity to fixed damage or immunity to silence, because Gorgeous Red gives immunity to fixed damage to other characters, but she herself does not get that immunity to fixed damage. Plus, I currently have a meditation ring on her for the immunity to fixed damage. The second item that is very usable for her would be the one that's used on healers for immunity to silence, which is the crystal ball, right? Immunity to silence. The third item, which is also immunity to silence, would be the holy ring, right? Giving, once again, immunity to silence, so she can keep using skills. Do note that those two would make her very vulnerable to, let's say, enemy Listells, right? Due to lack of immunity to fixed damage. But they are workable. And the final item, which is usable as an accessory, is one that I currently don't have, and it grants both immunity to fixed damage and immunity to silence, which is the Swordsmith Medal or the Bracer Emblem, right? All stats increased by 5%, immunity to fixed damage, and affects that silence active skills. The only drawback of using this one is it increases defense and magic defense, so it does not give any kind of intelligence increase. Nonetheless, the immunities are very, very important. That's why Swordsmith Medal is a very, very acceptable, and really, you can even say the ideal accessory for Imelda. So, that pretty much covers everything about building Imelda. Imelda, with this fully built up, Imelda has a wide variety of skills where she can do a bit of everything. If you're lacking a faction buff, you can make her bring mass attack. If you need the immunity to silence, once again, mass attack is a great choice. If you're facing Listell and you need to counter the debuff she applies, Dispel. If you if the enemy uses a Lancer tank, Freeze Strike, right? If you know that they don't have very many Sage's Hat or whatever, Blizzard could help reduce the enemy mobility, making them unable to guard, right? Regrowth is a guaranteed heal on allies within 2 blocks of her. Mass Heal is a decent secondary heal and can dispel debuffs, just kind of like Dispel. And Regenerate can help keep your tank healthy. So, wide variety of skills, all of them quite useful. It's hard to say which ones you bring, it's very situational, depending on the opponent's party that you face. So, that's everything I wanted to say about Imelda. Thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you found all this information useful. I mean, Imelda's just a great character in general because she can heal, she can dispel debuffs, she can do damage, and her talent will always increase the damage of allies, right? Basically being a damage increase buff. And in addition, she, with Gorgeous Red, provides immunity to fixed damage. Alright, so that's the concluding statement. Once again, I hope you found this video useful, and on that note, Nitro out.